Good morning, everyone. Today is Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, the day that was designated to remember the greatest tragedy, not just in our generation, but in all of Jewish history. The brutal murder of 6 million Jews, men, women, and children, 1.5 million children. And in Israel they have a moment of silence, and you could go on YouTube and watch it, like I watched it this morning. It's almost like you could participate in it, and you see the way all the cars in Tel Aviv pull off to the side, and everyone gets out of their car, and the whole country stands still for 2 minutes, for 120 seconds. And I did the math in my head. I divided 6 million by 120 seconds, and it comes out that you have about 1 second to remember 50,000 Jews who were murdered in the Holocaust. The numbers are unfathomable. But what's ironic is that Yom HaShoah is in the middle of the days of the counting of the Omer. We know the first 33 days of the counting of the Omer are sad days. We don't have weddings, we don't take haircuts during this day. Why? Because we're mourning the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva who died during this period. Presumably, perhaps during the time of the conflict with the Romans. So we're mourning the 6 million, but we're also mourning 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva. At the same time, the entire Jewish world is in the 7 days of mourning for Lori Gilbert Cade. A woman went to shul on the last day of Pesach and was shot, murdered for the one crime of being Jewish and coming to the synagogue to pray, to say Yizkor for her mother who died a year earlier. And here we have 6 million, we're remembering, 24,000, and one single woman. And the message couldn't be more powerful. We know the Talmud says if you save one life, it's like you saved an entire world. If you destroy one life, it's as though you destroyed an entire universe. And therefore every human being, every life has infinite value and preciousness. And therefore, just like we mourn for 6 million, we have to mourn for one woman, because every human being represents an entire universe. It happens to be that this week's parsha is also about mourning, because it's about the death of the 2 sons of Aaron. And it says, Vayidom Aaron, Aaron remained silent. What does that mean? We have questions of faith. How can God allow 6 million to perish? How could God allow the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva to die? How could God allow one woman, a beautiful woman, 60 years old, to be cut down by a bullet from an evil, deranged human being? How could that be? What did Aaron do? He kept quiet, meaning he accepted that we don't understand God's ways. We don't have answers, unfortunately. But while we have to be silent towards our acceptance of God's decrees, we cannot remain silent towards our fellow man. We must speak out. We must be outraged, and we must stop this madness. As our ancestors who came out of the Holocaust swore, never again will we allow this to happen. And now we're starting to see some of this happen all over again, and reminds us that we have to stand up and speak out and not tolerate this kind of hatred and anti-Semitism. And the worst mistake could be is to cower in the face of this, because that's what our enemies want. They want us to hide. They want us to be less Jewish. They want us to be less public about our Jewishness. They want us to be afraid. And therefore we have to stand taller, prouder, stronger, louder, and say, no, we're Jews and we have every right, and we're going to live as Jews, and we're not going to allow you to win by allowing us to be timid or intimidated by you. Rabbi Soloveitchik says something very beautiful. He says that there's a word lama in Hebrew. Lama means why. But he says lama could also be read lima, for what purpose? When tragedies like this happen, we can say, God, why? Or we could say, lema, what should be our response? There are no answers, but there are responses. And while we can't find answers, we could find the right response. Rabbi Samson Fall Hirsch points out that the word for a mourner in Hebrew is avel. The same letters of avel spell the word aval, however, which means, yes, we're in mourning, however, but things will never be the same. We will act differently as a result. And if you see Rabbi Goldstein, this incredible rabbi from Chabad Poway, how he is such a force for positivity and for goodness, and saying we have to act now. And that's a stirring message. And he's going to remember it for the rest of his life, because he's going to be missing an index finger. But we have to make sure we don't forget in a day or in a week or in a month and go on with our lives. We have to act differently going forth. And there's another lesson about silence in this week's parasha, because one of the reasons why Nadav and Avihu died, according to a Medrash, there are many reasons, is they were once walking, Nadav and Avihu, behind Moshe and Aaron. And the Medrash says that Nadav said to Avihu, when will these two elders, Moses and Aaron, which was their uncle and father, when will they pass away and we will assume the leadership roles of Moses and Aaron? So our rabbis say, God said, we'll see who will go before who. You think they're going to die and you're going to take over their positions. We'll see who will go before whom, and they passed away. But the rabbis say, if Nadav said it to Avihu, Nadav should have died. Why did Avihu get punished? And the only answer is he got punished because he remained silent when Nadav said it. He didn't stand up and protest it. And it shows you that the ones who are silent are as guilty as those who speak it. Everyone knows the famous pastor Niemöller, Martin Niemöller, who said, first they came for the socialists, but I wasn't a socialist, so I didn't speak up. Then they came for the trade unionists, but I wasn't a trade unionist, so I didn't speak up. Then they came for the Jews, but I wasn't a Jew, so I didn't speak up. But then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak up. This is the time to speak up, and that's why there's a movement and encouraging everyone, show up for Lori this Shabbat. Our enemies don't want us to come to Shul this Shabbat. They want us to be afraid to go to synagogue. And sadly, there will be Jews who will say, I'm not going to synagogue this Shabbat, it's too dangerous. But if we allow our synagogues to be empty, or emptier than usual, then we delivered a victory to our enemies, to the white supremacists, to the neo-Nazis. But if we show up in force for Lori, because she can't show up physically, we say, we're going to show up for you, we're going to pray for you, we're going to pray for your family, we're going to pray for your community, and we're going to remember you. That's the strongest and the most positive response, to stand up, to speak up, and to stand strong as a Jewish community. I'll just conclude with this story. There's a rabbi in California, his name is Rabbi Feinberg, and he tells a story. He was once in Yad Vashem in Jerusalem, and he sat down to watch a film, a documentary of a man telling a story. And there was a young Israeli officer, pilot, sitting next to her, a young girl in her 20s, weeping, crying, watching the film. He kept on looking at her. She was very moved by this testimony of this elderly man in the museum. And finally he offers her a tissue. He says, are you okay? She says, yeah, I'm okay. And finally she looks at him and says, Zah Saba Shali, this is my grandfather. And V'za'oto Sipur, it's the same story, Sheshamati, that I heard, Kol HaChayim Shali, my whole life I heard this story from my grandfather. And she's weeping as she's listening to her grandfather tell the story. And Rabbi Feinberg turns to this young girl in her uniform, an officer in the Israeli army, and says, Za'oto Sipur, it's the same story, Aval hasof acheret, but the ending is different. And she looked at him like, Maza sof acheret, what do you mean the ending is different? And he looked at her and he said, you, Katzin, an officer, Bechel Avir, in the Air Force, B'tzva Gana Yisrael, in the Israeli Armed Forces, B'Medinat Yisrael, in a Jewish state, Zeh sof acheret. This is a different ending to the story. We can write the ending to the story. And the ending has to be that we become stronger, we become prouder, we stand taller as a Jewish community. And if we do that, just like all our enemies have vanished, this newest enemy will vanish as well.